Hi there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Recently we've been talking a lot about the Jedi Order and taking a look at its last few years of existence. We've looked at how this religious organization was not compatible with the Republic and its galactic constitution and democracy. We looked at how the Jedi's own leader, Master Yoda, foresaw the destruction of the Jedi Temple, but just kind of let it happen. Why is that? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but one of those reasons is the Jedi, despite their best intentions, have actually been involved in several genocides. Yes, I'm talking about the big G. Genocides are defined as the deliberate killing of large numbers of people, or aliens in this case, from a particular nation or ethnic group, with the aims of destroying that nation or group. Genocides are terrible and destructive things. It's one of the main reasons why we started this kind of humanity first movement. And despite our more hawkish views on other alien races, we don't advocate the genocide of alien species lightly. Because when you wipe out any group of sentient beings, you not only wipe out their negative traits, but you also wipe out those positive traits, and that is a big problem. Genocides also create a terrible effect on the species who carry them out. It poisons their minds and cultures with hate and general nonsense. Any reasonable individual would disagree with such extreme measures, which is why it's not surprising that the Jedi Order has been involved in at least 5 different genocides throughout their history. Ever wonder how an extremely tough and proud warrior species went from being one of the dominant military powers in the galaxy to a bunch of pacifists living a humble life inside of domed cities? Well, it could be the Dralhan, which means the annihilation in Mandalorian. Republic historians call the event the Mandalorian excision, as in the excision of Mandalorians as if they were a cancer on the galaxy. This event happened in 738 BBY, just a few hundred years after the Ruusan Reformation in 1000 BBY. The Ruusan Reformation was a reaction to almost 1,000 years of continuous warfare between the Jedi and the Sith Order. This period of time was widely considered as the Dark Ages for the Republic by most historians. Wide swaths of the Republic were neglected and just cut off from Coruscant as the Sith started creating their own kingdoms in Republic space. You also had a huge loss of information, culture, and art. In the last decade of the war, the Jedi would more or less take over the political and military leadership of the Republic. They would occupy the Supreme Chancellor's position and also started the Army of the Light, a separate military force from the Republic Navy. When the fighting finally came to an end with the destruction of the Sith at Ruusan, the Republic vowed to demilitarize and the Jedi ceded their powers back to the Republic. There were galaxy-wide restrictions in arm trading and new regulations on what type of naval ships could be constructed. The Republic was making it extremely hard for anyone to develop a threatening military force, and it was working for almost everyone except for the Mandalorians. They had been gradually rebuilding their own society and were advancing rapidly in weapons technology and increasing the size of their military. The Mandalorians refused to join the Republic, and that alone was enough of an excuse for the Jedi to start a huge task force made out of judicial forces and planetary security forces and basically carry out a preemptive attack on Mandalore. The Mandalorians had not attacked the Jedi or shown any hostility against the Republic, and so they were completely unprepared and very quickly overwhelmed and outnumbered by these Republic forces. The Republic Navy used a healthy amount of planetary bombardment during this attack, and it resulted in the destruction of several Mandalorian worlds, making them basically uninhabitable. Countless Mandalorians died in these attacks, including a lot of non-combatants and even children. Although the Republic and Jedi didn't specifically target Mandalorians for destruction, they left their worlds completely uninhabitable, which meant they could no longer live on them. This is why to this day, Mandalorians hate the Jedi with a passion. So whether it's the Jedi in the Republic or the Sith in the Empire, everyone is always gunning for the Mandalorians. When the Clone Wars began, it absorbed many worlds already engaged in sectarian violence and civil war. Both the Republic and Separatist Alliance would promise aid, political, and military support for worlds that would join their cause, and so many smaller regional conflicts quickly erupted into full-out wars thanks to a fresh injection of modern weapons, troops, and ships supplied by both the Republic and the Separatists. One world that saw a massive escalation in violence during the Clone Wars period was Haruun Kal. This is the home world of Mace Windu. Haruun Kal was a difficult place to live on, and that was because most of the planet was covered in seas of toxic clouds, and so life was only possible in the highland areas that rose above these clouds. The native humans to this world were known as the Koronhai, or the Uplanders. They were all Force sensitive. They managed to survive in the deadly and wild jungles of the planet for hundreds of years. Some theorize that these Koronhai were descendants of Jedi who crash-landed on the planet during the Great Sith War. The exotic jungles on this planet had all sorts of rare flora that could be harvested and sold or brought, so the planet also started to attract corporate types who were looking to make a profit. These individuals were known as the Balawai, or the Downfolk. The Koronhai and the Balawai basically came into conflict over what they wanted to do with the jungle. The corporate types wanted to maintain the jungle so they could still harvest them, whereas the Uplanders wanted to basically cut all the trees down because it was making it very hard for them to move around. And this led to the beginning of the Summertime War. By the time the Clone Wars started, the conflict had been going on for 30 years. Things were not going well for the Koronhai, who lacked the same kind of financial backing and technology that the Balawai had. The Balawai would side with the CIS, especially after the Republic carried out an investigation on the Balawai government's treatment of the Koronhai. Jedi Master Depa Billaba would be sent to the Koronhai to carry out a foreign internal defense mission. Given the fact that all Koronhai were Force sensitive, it also meant that Depa Billaba would teach them how to use the Force, which of course is a terrible idea. Jedi Master Billaba also organized the Koronhai into what's known as the Upland Liberation Front, which oddly sounds like a real-life paramilitary organization that might be a terrorist organization or a freedom-fighting organization, depending on which side you're on. With their newfound Jedi training and none of the discipline and structure of the Jedi Order, Depa Billaba essentially created an army of dark side Force users who then started massacring the Balawai in large numbers. This becomes an even larger problem when Depa Billaba goes all Heart of Darkness a la Apocalypse Now on the Jedi Order. She basically drops off the grid, and there are rumors that the Koronhai are now worshipping her as some kind of deity. Now, Mace Windu is sent to basically bring his former Padawan back, and he does manage to do that, and he kind of fixes things on the planet. But Depa Billaba's actions aiding the Upland Liberation Front's relentless genocidal attacks against the Koronhai was labeled as crimes against civilization. That is basically the Republic's version of crimes against humanity. The only reason Depa wasn't tried for partaking in the genocide was the fact that she was now in a coma. When your government gives an event an extremely long-winded name like the Post-Great Hyperspace War Counter-Invasion, they're usually trying to shape the narrative around that event by specially wording things. You see, the Great Hyperspace War was one of the first attempts by the Sith Empire to invade Republic space. It was a terrifying event for the Republic and the Jedi Order, but they ended up defeating the threats and drove them back to their own territory. The post-Great Hyperspace War counter-invasion was, in fact, a counter-invasion. But it was also a sanctioned genocide that was carried out with the approval of the Republic and the Jedi Order. The post-Great Hyperspace War counter-invasion starts with Republic occupation of several Sith worlds. Supreme Chancellor Poltimo, quote, wanted to free the Sith species from the dark side corruption under which they had suffered for centuries. What he's talking about is a group of Jedi who were kicked out of the Order for being dark side curious. Those exiled Jedi would eventually find themselves on the Sith homeworld of Korriban, and basically they took over their entire society, and even their name. This was a problem created by the Jedi Order first, and now Supreme Chancellor Poltimo's attempt to remove the dark side from the Sith species was just an excuse to commit genocide, because it wasn't the Jedi exiles who brought the dark side to the Sith. The Sith as a species naturally were just more oriented to the dark side, as could happen with certain species. The occupation of Korriban and other Sith worlds quickly turned into an extermination. The Republic forces would destroy Sith temples, shrines, and archives in an attempt to wipe out any sign of their civilization. Not all of the Sith were killed, some would surrender peacefully, and these individuals were basically severed from the Force by the Jedi. This is like removing someone's senses. It's a terrible thing to do to a Force sensitive, even if they are an alien. This was a very dark period for the Republic and the Jedi Order. The Sith genocide forced the Sith to escape deeper into the unknown region. It also reinforced the idea that the Republic needed to be destroyed at all costs because they were more than willing to do the same to them. And so the Sith would gather their strength for centuries before launching an even more devastating attack on the Republic. The Republic never learned that all-important lesson that when you defeat an enemy, it's much wiser to basically make them into your trade partners instead of giving them a reason to strike back at you. Intent is important, but so are the results of one's actions. While the Jedi are not completely responsible for the genocide of the Geonosians, without their help and leadership during the Clone Wars, Geonosis would have most likely experienced a different fate. The first battle of Geonosis led to the occupation of the world by clone forces, but what the Republic didn't realize was that the surface of the planet was meaningless. The Geonosian hives underground remained active. And just a few months after the first battle of Geonosis, the Geonosians basically came out of the ground and took over the small clone garrison that was left on the planet. This caused the second battle of Geonosis to begin. A large invasion force led by the Jedi would try to end the Geonosian threat once and all, and this time around the Jedi uncovered the real leader of the Geonosians, a gigantic queen who used tiny parasitic worms to control her followers. Her name was Karina the Great, and she'd been kept hidden. And so most of the galaxy believed that her subordinate, Poggle the Lesser, was actually in control. The Jedi end up killing Karina the Great, which led to the end of her leadership and line. A Hive Queen is an extremely important part of any colony. One might even argue that they are the only sentient being in the entire colony, as most of the other workers lack a lot of the traits you might expect in a sentient being. The Empire would take advantage of this power vacuum during this transition and cozy up to the next queen, who definitely wasn't as great as Karina. The Empire would use the Geonosian hives to build the Death Star, and once the main laser weapon was ready, they basically exterminated the entire planet of Geonosis by using toxic gases. Although the Jedi are not directly responsible for this genocide, their actions directly led to the Geonosians' doom. By killing their experienced queen, the Geonosians no longer had a monarch who was capable of looking out for the best interests of the population, leaving them open to exploitation and their eventual destruction. It also should be mentioned that George Lucas got the idea from the Geonosians after termites infested his house. When we hear about the Battle of Endor, we oftentimes think of the death of Emperor Palpatine and the end of the Galactic Civil War and the destruction of the Death Star. What everyone forgets is that the Death Star was also in the orbit of Endor's moon. And so when it was destroyed, the moon's gravity pulled a lot of debris to the planet's surface. Sure, some of the debris landed on other moons and planets in shallow seas and somehow didn't disintegrate in the atmosphere, providing epic landscapes for later showdowns. And rebellion propaganda states that the Rebel Navy actually stopped a lot of debris from falling onto the planet by using tractor beams, if we are to believe them. But we know that, like a lot of things told from the view of the Rebel Alliance, that this was also nonsense and propaganda. They even made up this weird story that when the Death Star exploded, the hyperspace reactor created a wormhole and that sucked all of the debris into it. Sounds like a conspiracy theory, if you ask me. Instead, what really happened was the Endor Holocaust. This occurred when the Death Star's debris ignited massive forest fires all across Endor, rendering the world uninhabitable. This also ends up culling the majority of the Ewok meat stocks in the galaxy. A tragedy for the Ewoks and also food connoisseurs all over the galaxy. This was a genocide, and like all of the genocides on this list, a Jedi was somewhat responsible for it. Guys, I got nothing personal against the Jedi. I really like Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I don't like it when we put organizations and groups on pedestals and pretend like they're perfect. An organization like the Jedi, who've been active for thousands of years and have had massive amounts of power and control over the course of galactic history, will most likely have gotten their hands dirty at one time or another. And we just wanted to explain that to you guys by showing you, no organization is perfect. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.